You pursued your childhood sweetheart for 10 years, but suddenly announced at the engagement party that you would marry his uncle. It was because after Rebirth, you saw with your own eyes the secret photo album he had hidden for 20 years. Not only did you find out that he had never loved you, but he even married your cousin immediately after your death. However, when you were about to sign the marriage certificate, he tore up the agreement in public and said it was just a game. At this moment, you took out the pregnancy test report and threw it in his face. Mom asked me who I wanted to marry. This time I didn't choose Simon Hughes but his uncle Daniel Hughes. When my mother heard this, her eyes suddenly became sharp and full of disbelief, as if I had slapped her in the face. After all, everyone in this city knows that Simon and I have been inseparable since we were little. I have been chasing him for 10 years and I even said I would marry him, but that was my past. I am not like that now. Thinking of my past life, I let out a bitter smile. In my previous life, I married Simon and found out something heartbreaking. He never touched me. At first I comforted myself and thought that maybe he had something to hide. I made excuses for him and told myself not to care, but on our golden anniversary I walked into a room I had never seen before. That room is locked and hidden away and is filled with photos of my cousin Audrey. At that moment I realized that it was not that Simon was asexual, but that he did not love me at all. I don't want to waste my time on someone who doesn't love me anymore. I decided to just let them be together, but when I walked down the aisle with Daniel, Simon turned pale and lost control. I ran into Simon at a party 3 days after we got officially engaged. His friend noticed me and took the opportunity to tease me. "Simon, your little follower is here again," someone shouted with a smile. "Bianca, you're already engaged to Simon, but you're still clinging to him? Can't you let him enjoy the party before the wedding?" Another person followed suit. Simon saw that I was full of impatience. "Bianca, are you in such a hurry to marry me? You didn't even ask me before you got engaged. The whole city is talking about you. You're so brave." His look of disgust was like a punch to my stomach. I took a deep breath to steady myself before replying, "I don't need your consent to not marry you." The room suddenly burst into laughter. Simon's friends laughed so hard that they fell backwards. "Simon, be careful. Your fiancé is trying to attract your attention again," someone shouted. Simon shook his head with increasing impatience. "Bianca, are you still playing hard to get?" I couldn't help but sneer. "If I don't marry you, who else will marry you in the Hughes family?" He leaned in closer and said with a mocking tone, "Don't forget that we have been together since we were young. You said you would marry me. Everyone in the city thought you were mine." Then he whispered, "I won't worry about the engagement for now, but remember for the wedding I can get you a marriage certificate, but I will only get it with the person I really want to marry." I was stunned. In my previous life, Simon registered his marriage with me at this time according to my family's arrangement. Could it be that he was reborn too? Before I could figure it out, my cousin Audrey showed up at the party. When she saw me and Simon standing together, her face suddenly twisted and tears welled up in her eyes. "Bianca, Simon, I heard you're getting married soon. I didn't bring any gifts, but I wish you happiness," she stammered, her voice trembling. Before she could finish her words, Audrey turned around and ran away, crying. "Look what you've done, Bianca," Simon muttered and glared at me before running after Audrey. They came back holding hands. Audrey's lips were swollen, and Simon had a kiss mark on his neck. Everyone is watching and waiting for my reaction. In my previous life, if I had seen another woman approaching Simon, I would have made a scene to let everyone know that I was his. Simon stepped forward and protected Audrey behind him with a strange look of expectation on his face, but I didn't give him the reaction he wanted. After a few minutes, his smug expression began to waver, and then he sneered, "Oh, it seems that you have grown up a little and are not as yelling and throwing tantrums as before." I ignored him. When the party was over and everyone was about to leave, Simon stopped me. "It's too late to be safe. I'll take you there," he said. I didn't refuse the free ride. Just as I was about to get in the back seat, Simon was one step faster than me and blocked the passenger seat and said, "You sit in the back." After that, he gently helped Audrey sit in the passenger seat as if it was a matter of course. "I'm sorry, Bianca," Audrey said hypocritically. "Simon is just concerned about me and worried that I might get carsick." I didn't say anything and got into the back seat. I was planning to sit here. Simon and Audrey chatted and laughed along the way as if no one was around. Audrey asked Simon to put lipstick on her while waiting at a red light. They looked at each other and the air became more heated. Suddenly Simon seemed to remember me and looked at the rearview mirror. Our eyes met and I deliberately looked out the window and ignored them. His expression suddenly became a little unnatural. I saw a flash of anger on his face and then he stepped on the accelerator. When we got to my house, Simon did something that surprised me. He grabbed my arm again. "Okay, stop pretending," he said with contempt. "Don't pretend that you don't care. This is not like you." He stuffed a bracelet in my hand and said, "This is an engagement gift for you." His tone was full of superiority. "As long as you are obedient, I will hold a wedding for you. At least on the surface, everyone will think you are my wife." I looked up at him. "Who do you want to marry, Audrey?" Simon looked angry but also a little proud, as if he was enjoying this chaotic situation. "I knew you were just pretending," he sneered. "Listen carefully. Don't tell any of the two families. It's none of your business what happens between Audrey and me. She's kind and fragile, unlike you who are full of bad intentions." He lowered his voice as if to warn, "Don't expect me to marry you if you dare to hurt her." I couldn't help but laugh at him for not having the guts to confess to the Hughes family and treating me like a bad guy. I said nothing more and walked into the apartment. As soon as I entered the door, my phone rang. It was a video sent by Audrey. I hesitated but still opened the video. Simon was gently helping Audrey put on the necklace. The brand looked familiar. It was then that I realized that the bracelet Simon gave me was a gift from the necklace. They were so close together, almost touching, and then the camera zoomed in on them kissing, and the sound was like a slap in the chest. "Bianca, Simon must have told you, right? He will get the marriage certificate with me after the wedding. You should know that without a marriage certificate, you have no inheritance rights. Looks like I'm going to be the richest woman in Chongqing City." Audrey, she was also reborn. Now I understand everything. Simon and Audrey had no connection in their previous life. In this life, they are like a couple after just a few days. It's like we're connected by telepathy and continuing from our previous life. I lowered my head and the memories of my previous life came flooding back to me. Everything changed when I first married into the Hughes family. The company received a lot of cooperation invitations and new contracts continued. Hughes Enterprises' assets soared and soon became the richest company in Los Angeles. The old man of the Hughes family thinks I bring good luck to Simon. The strange thing is that my family family likes me more and more and treats me as their own family. Despite Simon's indifference, I felt happy until I found those photos. One afternoon my mother came into my room with a piece of news. Simon's uncle Daniel will be back from Europe in 5 days, she said. I was stunned and a little surprised. In my previous life, Daniel had never been married, and I never expected our arranged marriage to progress so quickly. I have a vague impression of Daniel, but I can be sure that he has always been a good person, like my big brother. Now I feel more at ease marrying him than marrying someone else. I don't know why, but I feel it's right when I think of him. The next morning I woke up early and designed my wedding dress in the studio. I started drawing my dream wedding dress when I studied fashion design in college, but in the past the designs had to conform to Simon's taste. He wouldn't allow me to use the elements I liked. Everything had to be done according to his wishes, but now it's different. I am free. You can design the wedding dress you really want to wear and you are marrying someone else. A few days later, the wedding dress was finally finished and I went to the lounge to drink coffee. Then I saw Audrey's post. She was wearing my wedding dress in the photo, but it was not what I imagined. The dress was cut into a miniskirt. What's even more outrageous is that she and Simon danced closely. Simon knew I needed a dress and gave it to me. I feel so happy. I couldn't believe my eyes. My heart was pounding with anger. Without saying a word, I rushed to the banquet hall on the 5th floor. When I got there, I saw Audrey and Simon dancing with their bodies pressed together as if no one was around. This is my wedding dress. I couldn't help but yell, how dare you give it to her and ruin it like this? Audrey immediately pretended to be innocent. Her eyes were full of fake tears. Her voice was trembling. Simon, what did I do wrong? Why is she so angry? She cried softly. Simon immediately stood in front of her, guarding me like a thief. Bianca is just a dress, he sneered. Besides, you still have to wear it at the wedding. What's the big deal? If it's so important, can't you just make another one? I was so angry. Who said I want to wear it for you to see? I replied coldly. This is the wedding dress I wore when I got married. Simon shook his head in disdain as if he was looking at a childish child. Come on, Bianca, stop pretending. Your wedding is our wedding. I've already agreed to marry you, so stop acting. I'm done. I saw a pair of scissors on the table next to me, picked them up, walked towards Audrey's skirt, and cut the hem without hesitation. Simon, I said in a cold and sharp voice, since you are so confident, just watch me. I will not take dirty things nor keep a tainted wedding dress. Simon was stunned. His eyes were full of shock. No matter how I made trouble before, he had never seen me so serious and determined. He instinctively reached out to stop me and Audrey screamed, Simon, my leg. It seems to be bruised and it hurts. Don't worry, I'll go check it out. She blames me. Simon hesitated, looked at me and then at Audrey. After a while he sneered, don't worry about her. An insecure woman like her needs to be taught a lesson so that she can reflect on herself. I don't have the energy to respond. My body is numb and my heart feels like it's fallen into the abyss. I just stood there and watched my wedding dress, which I had worked so hard on, fall apart in my hands, the delicate fabric unraveling like my life. I wiped my tears silently and tried to calm down, but the pain of losing everything rushed towards me like a train. All efforts and hopes were shattered in an instant. If a wedding dress can reveal a person's true face, maybe I should be thankful. After all, I finally saw what kind of person Simon was and no longer had any illusions. Tonight is a family dinner and I'm going to meet Daniel formally. First impressions are important. I have to dress nicely. After what happened with Simon and Audrey, I don't want to be criticized anymore. I packed up briefly, cheered myself up, and went to the underground parking lot. At this time, I saw Simon's Maserati swaying slightly in the distance. I walked closer curiously and looked through the half-open window at the scene inside. My stomach started to churn. Simon and Audrey were in the car. Audrey sat on his lap with her eyes blurred and moving up and down. Even though I knew Simon didn't love me, seeing it with my own eyes still felt like a punch in the face. For a moment our eyes met and there was a flash of panic in his eyes, but it quickly disappeared and was replaced by a mocking smile. To piss me off, he deliberately pulled Audrey's hair aside and kissed her passionately, slowly, and exaggeratedly. Audrey deliberately moaned and echoed in the garage. I turned around and got into my car with a blank expression. I have more important things to do tonight. On the way to Hughes's house, I stopped at the store and bought Daniel a fancy silk tie as a gift. When I got there I was surprised to see Simon had just arrived. He got out of the car and I clearly saw a used condom thrown on the passenger seat. That's disgusting. When he saw me holding the gift bag, a flash of embarrassment flashed across his face, but he quickly returned to his smug look. A gift for me? He said as he walked towards me. Let me see it. I hid the bag behind me. It's not for you, I said coldly. Simon snorted and exhaled a puff of smoke, as if I was not worth his time. Did you see what happened in the garage? His tone was so casual that it was annoying. I know you have a crush on me, but I told you that the wedding was yours and the marriage certificate was Audrey's. She was the one who was wrong. He moved closer and more arrogantly. What we just did was normal. After all, she is my future legal wife. Oh, and she might occasionally stay in our wedding house for a night or two. You'd better get used to it as soon as possible. This is for your own good. I couldn't believe his audacity. Although I had already decided not to marry him, I didn't expect him to be so shameless as to brag about his affair in front of me. I turned to leave and he grabbed my arm again. Listen, he lowered his voice. My uncle will be here tonight. He is very important to our family. This is a big deal. I am giving you a lot of face by letting you come. I almost rolled my eyes. Also, if Grandpa and Dad ask about the marriage certificate, just tell them we've already registered it, okay? You have to apologize to Audrey after dinner for getting hurt this afternoon. Don't forget that I can change my mind at any time before the wedding. After that, he strode into Hughes' house as if nothing had happened. I took a deep breath and held the gift bag tightly. Okay, he'll soon find out who I'm going to marry. Most of the Hughes family elders were at the dinner, but Daniel was not there yet. I quietly found a seat far away from Simon and sat down, leaving an empty seat next to him. Simon noticed it immediately, frowned, looked unhappy, and sat down next to me. You've been getting more dramatic lately, he muttered, looking at the empty seat next to him. Isn't there a seat reserved for you over there? Why do you have to make trouble? I ignored him and was about to tell him that this position was not for him when a tall and majestic figure appeared at the door. Daniel walked into the restaurant. He was wearing a tailor-made suit that fit him well. His steps were steady and confident. Every move he made exuded elegance and majesty.